Rebel Sports Pod, covering the New York sports scene and behind the scenes, including the Buffalo Bills, New York Jets, New York Mets, and everything else in New York sports worth your precious time. And now here's Joe Pastor and Glenn Ferretti.
Hello, everybody. Glenn, how you doing? It was quite the weekend of games, right?
Yeah, super wild card weekend lived up to its name for sure. Pretty crazy.
For sure, no doubt. What do you want to get started talking about? Do we jump right into the Bills or maybe take a little more of a chronological approach?
I don't know. I think people probably want to have a little Bills update.
Okay.
I mean, that was a pretty exciting game for sure.
That was. I mean, it starts out that the Bills clearly looked that they were on a completely different level. The deep shots down the field were opening up that short passing game, and even a couple nice runs by Cook. But like even at the beginning, you saw that part of Josh Allen's game when he looks like a surgeon cutting up defenses, like on that slant, for example, to Diggs, the touchdown pass to Knox that was insane. And then even Gabe Davis looking like playoff Gabe Davis or toe drag swag Gabe Davis in the end zone. But things looked a lot different after that.
Yeah, I think it's funny the perspective when you are a Bills fan, though, and to when you're not a Bills fan, when you're kind of like analyzing Josh Allen's day yesterday. Because I think most people would say, you know, he had some really good moments, but a lot of pretty poor moments as well. I mean, if they would have lost that game, I mean, I think you could definitely make the argument that, you know, Josh was a big reason why they potentially lose that game.
Yeah, you could say that because I think what you saw a lot of is once Miami took away the underneath routes, you saw a lot of low percentage passes from the Bills, particularly in cases where I didn't really like them, like the interception he threw to John Brown, where it looked like Brown broke off his route. Now, some people are saying that's what he was supposed to do, but who knows? But the point is that play was on a first down.
Right.
If that plays on third down, I have no problem with that, forcing it there, because it's like a punt anyway. You might as well throw it deep on a punt when you're going to punt anyway, probably because you might get a completion, pass interference, hold, roughing the passer, so on and so forth with the way the rules are. But on a first down, yeah, I had a hard time, I think, looking back at it, at how many low percentage passing attempts were made in that game.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to tell whether that was really John Brown's fault or Allen's fault, because I mean, if you listen to Tony Romo on the coverage, like, Josh can literally do no wrong. I mean, it is insane how much he was sweating him the entire game. So it's really hard to tell. To me, I mean, it looked like what you'd said. First down, they took a shot downfield. Obviously, Xavier Howard made a sick play on the ball, but I think any other quarterback gets some ridicule for making that throw there.
Not if it's Patrick Mahomes, not if it's Joe Burrow. There's some guys that are going to do it, particularly probably more so Mahomes and Allen. So I get how non-Bills fans feel, because I get annoyed, and I'm actually going to bring something up later about a play of one quarterback where if Mahomes had made that play, people would be salivating over it today, but because of who made the play, no one's really talking about it, in my opinion. So yeah, there's definitely this perception. It's kind of like, remember how like John Madden would like salivate over Brett Favre back in the day, for those of you that are old enough to remember that, to the point where it got sickening. I don't think it's at that level with anyone, with not to disparage the guy, everyone loved John Madden, but his love affair with Brett Favre.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it was, but it was interesting to watch as those kind of mistakes were being made. And I think that's kind of what we're going to be able to tell with Allen, either over these playoffs or even the next few years, because he definitely shows signs of like pressing when things are not going well. Which, I mean, you do see obviously in a lot of other players, but he does seem to get off track. And I think they even like mentioned it during the game of when the Bills got that other turnover back from Miami, or they turned it over on downs, that it kind of settled Josh down to really kind of get back into it. But he was definitely like on the ropes of teetering in the wrong direction during this game.
And I'm also going to point out Ken Dorsey in this case, because in the first quarter, Stephon Diggs had something like 100 yards receiving. Miami made some adjustments, and then I think he had like one catch or something like that the rest of the game. That's the OC's fault. So, like, if the opposing team is taking out your best player, your best receiver, I should say, that's on the OC to not make the adjustments. And then what do you expect Josh to do? He's got to try to make something, happen. So, I'm not so sure I'd put it all on Josh. I'd say we also have a responsibility to get our guys open, because if you look at some of the teams that lost this week, the Vikings didn't throw to Justin Jefferson in the fourth quarter because he was like double covered. You still throw to your guy. Like, I remember playing Justin Jefferson when I think it was Benford on him. Benford jumped up, had two hands on the ball, and then Jefferson just reached in there with his left hand, his non-dominant hand, and ripped the ball away. Like, he mosses people. And even J.K. Dobbins was not happy. He clearly looked like he was the best offensive player on the field, maybe even for both teams. And I think he had like 12 touches in the game. So, these OCs, I think some shoulder some of the blame as well if you can't scheme a way to get your playmakers the ball.
Yeah, so with that being said, so should Cousins and Allen be forcing some throws into Diggs and Jefferson in the second half? Because I agree, both of those guys completely disappeared after like the first quarter of the games.
I think Jefferson is going to probably beat those kinds of coverages more than Diggs will. But what Allen could do is thread the needle. So if you look at a lot of the passes Allen was making too, he was lofting a lot of balls. It was probably because of the cold. When it's 20 degrees out, it's, tough to catch a laser. Maybe that was part of Jalen Waddle's problem. He seemed like he couldn't catch the ball for anything.
Yeah, a lot of drop balls in that game.
But I think that was part of the things, too, that we saw with Allen. And then maybe the Bills are going to benefit from playing, if they do make it to the AFC Championship game, or when they do make it to the AFC Championship game, of playing indoors. Because if it takes that element of Josh's game over to throw these lasers and thread the needle, I think he's going to be able to more force it into Diggs when he could throw the ball like that, as opposed to if you're lofting the ball. I don't think he doesn't have the same skill set that Jefferson has to maybe throw those jump balls where you could win those 1-on-1s or even 2-on-1s. Or I remember Randy Moss winning 3-on-1s.
Yeah,
I think that's the difference.
Hopefully that wasn't a Freudian slip by you there when foreshadowing of next week's game on if the Bills make it to the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, and it's just funny, too, how things change, because the thing people were saying right after the game was, if the Bills play this way, they barely lost to beat Miami. They're going to have a hard time with the Bengals or the Chiefs. Well, then look what the Bengals went and did. They almost lost to the Ravens because A, it's playoff football. B, that's the third time you've played that team. They hate each other. Back in the day, I remember talking about football with Fuzzy, and he would always say that's a divisional game. If you were going to take the big, favorite 10-point line, he'd always say, it's a divisional game. They hate each other.
Yeah. It's week to week. I think in the NFL, it's, typically, you've seen this before. Teams struggle in the first round and then could even go on a run. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. Yeah, the Bengals didn't look like they were playing their best game, but I agree. When you play in Miami, it's like you guys play each other twice a year, now third time in a year. And, they kind of know the blueprint. They played good defense against the Bills earlier in the year. I mean, obviously they beat you guys earlier in the year. I know they had Tua at that time, but
and they did cook us in the sun. That would be like the equivalent of us not shoveling their sideline and maybe going like the New England Patriots, and all of a sudden their heated seats don't work, but ours work fine.
Right.
So that is a shady stadium on their part.
Yeah, I'm sure. Was there any antics done by the Bills yesterday, or you guys took care of their sidelines?
Not that I've heard. The only thing I heard about that game was people complaining about the officials and that the officials gave the game to the Bills, which is just patently untrue. I think if you look at that game, there was the hit that Milano made on the sidelines that could have been called the late hit. Then they're going to throw the game for the Bills, but then on the very next play they called the pass interference on Trey White, which was pass interference.
Yeah.
So there's just countless other things. The officials overturned 2 close catches. The one to Shakir, which is a positive note, seeing him play. He made that fantastic catch where he jumped up at the game. But what I'm talking about was the diving one that may have looked like it hit the ground.
It looked like it wasn't a catch.
And then the Knox play. But I'm just saying that the refs are not like taking bribes, and the game is not fixed if they're overturning 2 calls that are very close that they easily could have said the evidence was inconclusive in the replay, particularly the Knox one that it went to commercial and then it came back and they still hadn't sorted it out yet. So the Bill Parcells rule that a call should only be overturned if 6 drunks in a bar would agree on it might not apply to that play. But they did overturn it, and that's fine. Just the point is like, I think it was a Kansas City media outlet that said the game is fixed. The NFL is going to give the Super Bowl to the Bills. And, that stuff just makes me laugh.
Yeah, I mean, unbiased. I didn't really think it was too crazy. I thought all the overturns were good. I know we kind of went back and forth a little bit on the Diggs catch as well. I think it was pretty clear by the time he actually caught the ball, he was well out of bounds. But some people are trying to argue that, like once it touches his left hand there, that his first foot was already down. But that's really hard to reward that as a touchdown, I think, at that point.
Yeah, it was a very close. It was a close call. It was a very close call, and sometimes who the receiver is catching it makes a difference. So, I mean, if anyone's going to get the benefit of the doubt, it would be like a Diggs, or he brought up a Justin Jefferson, as opposed to a lower tier receiver. I'm not going to complain about the officials' decision, but I think it just gives further proof that there's no way that the NFL is fixed. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
I mean, I did think it was odd. I thought the Bills only had like 2 penalties in the game, as I think they showed the stat towards the end of the fourth quarter. But when I was watching the game, I wasn't really thinking that there was anything, egregious that was missed that I could even think of. So usually you have a couple things that you could point out at that point, but I didn't see anything crazy. Yeah,
nothing egregious. And remember, officials are humans. They're going to make mistakes just like, just like the players do.
Right.
I
mean, to me, I think really what came down to Miami not having a chance to win the game at the end was obviously the clear lack of really utilizing their timeouts correctly.
Yeah.
So
and the crowd noise just became it was a huge factor throughout the entire game, even at the beginning, whether it's the false starts, whether it's not being able to get the play in, even players on the Bills. I think it was on the radio, but I'm pretty sure it was Deion Dawkins saying sometimes you couldn't hear the play call in the huddle, and you'd have to ask the guy next to you, what was the play, because it was so loud there. And Miami just, there was even, what was it? There was an injury to Ed Oliver, and then they still couldn't get a play in and snap the ball, which is just completely unexcusable.
Well, that one was huge. I mean, that was 4th and inches, and to them it just looked like they just could not decide on a play. Where they were waiting for the play call to come in, and that that's truly on. I think McDaniel calls the plays for the Dolphins. It's like if you get a 25-second clock reset because of an injury and you're still not getting the play into your team in time, and you get a delay a game penalty in that spot. I mean, that is so crucial.
It is unbelievable. I guess that's what happens when, you know how I feel about Mike McDaniel, but I guess that's what happens when your coach looks like he listens to jazz and, things of that nature.
Yeah, it looked like he even missed Diggs on that, or not Diggs, Tyreek Hill across the middle on that play as well.
He did, yeah, and he threw to their third receiver. The name slipped in my mind, but yeah, how do you not look for your dog? Which he did earlier in the game. There was that 3rd and 18 that they, the Bills leave Tyreek Hill of all people open. I mean, Waddle's not catching the ball. How do you leave? Even if he was, how do you leave Tyreek Hill open? And they converted on that 3rd and very long. So yeah, you got to throw to your dogs. You got to throw to your guys. And Miami just fell apart, showed they weren't ready for the end, and the Bills were clearly the better team. And that's why for the majority of the game, I was on edge for sure. But did I think the Bills were going to lose? No. Was I concerned they might lose for one brief moment in time with the fumble for the touchdown right at the beginning of the third quarter? That's where you got a little nervous. But at that point, still, you're telling yourself there's a lot of football left. They're going to make something happen.
Yeah, I would have been pretty nervous if I was sitting in your shoes, just the way the game was kind of unfolding and, making, uncommon mistakes that were happening. And Miami seemed to have some momentum through the game. I think when you guys took the 10-point lead in the third quarter, certainly settled the team down, but Miami came right back and made it a game again. So,
oh yeah, it was nerve-wracking. I mean, I was talking to a parent when I dropped my kids off at daycare this morning, and they were like, "You got to invent like this device to where while you watch games that it like will measure how many years of your life you just lost because of your increased heart rate from watching the Bills." In particular, but it's like, because they throw all those big plays, those deep passes, it was almost like, oh, they're going to get one. They're going to get one. They're going to get one. So you're nervous. But it's kind of like if it's baseball, like having that team that relies on home runs to win games. And as we've seen a lot of times in the postseason, that's not always a good formula for winning. So hopefully we see some more of the precision passing, from Josh next week.
Yeah, and I think utilizing James Cook more. I mean, and it doesn't necessarily have to be running the ball, but the guy obviously can do things out of the backfield, and they continue to just not utilize these guys as much as I think they can, especially in situations when you're trying to kind of settle the team back down. You don't want to have another turnover, which they saw. The turnovers kept just piling up on top of each other, throw after throw, 2 interceptions and then getting sacked on another throw. It's like, we got to kind of settle things down here so we can get back to what we really do. It's like you need to take one drive and just kind of really start to involve other players. I think that's one of the things the Bills have fallen in love with. And it's something that could cost them later, as you start to play better and better teams throughout the playoffs.
Yeah, I want them to run the ball situationally. And so to that end, sure. Particularly at the end of the game, I think I do like Cook, but for whatever reason, at the end of the game, it seems that like Singletary usually does a nice job running the clock out and getting gains. There was the play when they were running the ball at the end when it looks like the play was designed to go off tackle, and that wasn't there. So Cook bounced it offside and took a loss and almost went out of bounds. Yeah. Whereas Singletary is going to go right ahead and just get you, a few yards. So I wonder to what extent that we saw so little of Singletary today, how much of that was based upon maybe a little loss of confidence because that fumble he had last week. And then also, too, the trajectory that Cook seems to be taking. It certainly seems that Cook is definitely going to be the guy next year, and being a free agent, Singletary might not even be on the team.
Yeah, that's true. So he better try to get his ring now. But, yeah, I mean, I don't know. They certainly avoided, which I think most people would have considered probably one of the worst losses in playoff history if they would have lost that game.
Yeah, it would have been. It would have been because not very often has a team covered a spread like that. It was only the Jets have, and back with Joe Namath, and then the Patriots did against the Rams. But, I did talk about this also on TikTok, but the Patriots cheated to do it. That's when they dressed up as NFL films officials, filmed all the Rams practices, and knew exactly what was coming. So, yeah, it's really only happened once because I don't count the cheating. So, yeah, it would have been an epic fail had that happened. But that's why, even though my heart was pounding out of my chest, I was pretty confident throughout the game that the Bills would win. I never really felt, even through any of their 3 losses, that they were going to lose the game. So I don't know, maybe it's just me.
Yeah, it sounds like Bills Mafia. That's how they all feel. Mm-hmm. You might have had to do a recant on your Dolphin TikTok as well if they would have taken care of the Buffalo. Some people would argue that a Dolphin is tougher than a Buffalo. So we'll have to kind of see. I guess you guys will hold the throne this year, but they put a nice scare into you guys.
Do you know what Buffaloes don't do? They don't get caught in tuna nets. So, there's that.
That's true. That was pretty funny. If you haven't seen that, definitely go check it out.
Yeah, that was great. No offense, Dolphins fans. I mean, it's all in good fun,
Right. Well, they survived this week, and obviously they're on to play Cincinnati, who survived last night against Baltimore, who, I think most people would say they gave them much more of a game than anyone anticipated as well without their starting quarterback.
Correct. And speaking of starting quarterbacks, just one last point about the Bills before we jump in. You hear a lot of Miami had a third string quarterback. Well, so does San Francisco. But
that's a tough argument, though. I mean, Skylar Thompson's played terrible.
That's true, but
Brock Purdy's played really well.
He has.
Yeah.
But is it the system? Is it Brock Purdy? Who knows? No,
I think it was more the fact of the Dolphins' defense over Skylar Thompson. Just, he threw a couple interceptions that, most people would argue that were just terrible decisions, too, at the time. Third and long was the one interception where he just kind of chucked it up and gave the Bills. That was where the Bills kind of got their momentum back.
Yep,
after a few
Elam
turnovers.
Interception.
Yeah, I mean, it was on their own 10-yard line, and it was third and 18 or 20, and he just chucked it up to the left side, and the Bills took over on the 30 or 35-yard line. I mean, you're much better off with a punt there and live to fight another day.
Yeah, but he definitely didn't play that well, but he didn't get a lot of help from Jalen Waddle, that's for sure.
Yeah, Mr. Irrelevant is certainly outplaying Skylar Thompson.
Oh, no doubt. But to the Ravens, the big play in that game is obviously the quarterback Huntley trying to jump over the pile. The next gen stats was something like, at that time, the Ravens win possibility was something like in the 60s. 60%.
Yeah, it was like 55, 60. I saw that. Yep.
And then after that play, it was like something ridiculous where the Bengals had an 80% chance of winning. It may have been one of the biggest plays in playoff history, maybe right up there with the Tyron Johnson interception return for a touchdown, also against the Ravens, who just seemed to choke away a lot of games this year. I mean, remember all those games they lost by 20 points at the beginning of the season? One of them to the Bills, to Miami, I think to the Giants, and maybe someone else.
Yeah, or the James Harrison in the Super Bowl, right down there on the goal line against the Cardinals. I mean, I just didn't understand why he was trying to jump over the pile in that situation where they were – they clearly had the play where they're just pushing the guy forward.
Yes, so his players were pushing him.
Yeah, and he was way too far away to jump over the pile, and bad things happen when you just lay the ball out there with some hungry linebackers waiting to hit the ball.
Yeah, he may have watched Trevor Lawrence, the night before and tried to replicate that, but certainly did not work for him. And that's where J.K. Dobbins was mad about the play calling, because wouldn't you give the ball to was probably the best offensive player on the field, certainly for your team, was J.K. Dobbins.
I didn't have a problem with the quarterback sneak. I just think the problem was with the execution of it.
Okay.
It's worked almost every time when you just push the guy in, but you teach the guys to stay low, and let them push you in, not jump up in the air where you have no protection.
For sure, that definitely ended badly for Baltimore. We already talked about them. It's not Dobbins getting 12 touches, and then just how Cincinnati has just seemed to have struggled, against Baltimore in all three games that they've played. Losing once. It
was the same. I think it was the same old story with the protection issues for Burrow. So obviously that's something the Bills will have to focus on next week, is how they can, draw up some blitzes, try to get to Burrow, put some pressure on him, because if he doesn't have pressure, he's going to find those receivers all day. And that's, I think, what kind of started when they were playing the Bills game.
Yes.
Is they were going up and down the field on him. But you could see what happens when you get some pressure on this guy. That offensive line, whether it's revamped or not, it's still not, a top-tier offensive line protecting him. And they certainly struggle when they get some pressure around him.
And they have injuries, so.
Yeah. But, they survived. They didn't work in really any of Joe Mixon. He didn't really do much in the game at all. So that'll be interesting to see if that kind of game plan changes for next week to try to, limit the Bills and Josh Allen from, touching the ball, try to keep them more on the sideline, sustain drives a little bit more. But he was basically a non-factor in this game against the Ravens.
Yeah. Or are they just going to try to pass to try to keep up with the Bills? Be interesting to see how that game ebbs and flows. Do the Bills have a similar strategy of, hey, maybe we need to run the ball a little more to keep Burrow and company off the field and protect our banged up secondary?
Right. Yeah, you guys had a couple injuries. Be interested to see if anyone's inactive for next week's game or not.
Yeah, the nice thing is that we did have Elam to come in. I mean, he's a rookie, still has stuff to work on, but he was a first-round pick. But, I get aggravated then when spending first-round picks on defensive backs unless they're like, a Sauce Gardner or someone of that nature.
Right.
But I'm glad we have him now. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah, he's on the field. I mean, I know he wasn't playing, but obviously he's getting an opportunity now with some injuries. So we'll see if he takes advantage of it. Yeah, there's not that many first-team All-Pro rookie Sauce Gardners out there. So
yeah, and he's going back to school to finish his degree this summer. So he said he had a 3.5, and it really means a lot to him. So good for him.
Yeah, Sauce does not only play video games. Apparently he hits the books too. So it's good to see he's getting his education there. But that was good. So what the other game yesterday was the Giants-Vikings, with the Giants taking that one. So what's your thoughts on that one? I got some interesting thoughts on that as well.
So this is if Mahomes did it, everyone would have been salivating on the play, where I'm sure you probably know where I'm talking about, where he pump faked the throw with one hand and handed off behind his back to Barkley. I mean, that was genius. That was a beautiful play. But I don't see it getting talked about much. I watched 2 highlight reels of the game, didn't see the play. And again, if Mahomes does it, all we're going to hear everybody is salivate over what a magician Mahomes is, which he is, but let's give credit where credit is due. Daniel Jones, wow, what a game. Like the job Dable's done with him, it's like he's turned him into, and I mean this in a complimentary way, a poor man's version of Josh Allen. He's not quite as big of an arm, but he's completing passes when he has no one to really throw to. He's not turning the ball over. That was the version of Josh Allen we saw more of when Dable was in Buffalo. So, I can't say enough nice things about, what the job he's done there and what we saw out of Daniel Jones, but also Saquon Barkley looking hungry and looking like the Saquon Barkley of old yesterday.
Yeah, that's certainly what they brought in Barkley and drafted him so high to do. But the Daniel Jones thing is interesting to me because obviously he had a huge game yesterday, over 300 yards, couple touchdowns. But I think the story of this is like how awful the Vikings really are. Like they must be the worst 13-win team out there. I mean, the Jets had 7 red zone possessions against the Vikings. They really couldn't stop anyone. You could see those receivers were running wild. So, I mean, I could certainly see, obviously, the progression of Daniel Jones this year to being a good quarterback. I think it would probably be hard to argue that there's like 10 or 12 better quarterbacks. Like if you really started to think about it, I don't know if that's just saying something about the lack of, kind of quarterback talent, or he certainly has gotten a lot better. But at the end of the day, like the guy had 15 touchdown passes this year. Like, I mean, we're, and every Giants fan, we were going to try to get a Giants fan on here to talk about this. Every Giants fan will just point to, the fact that we have no receivers and
it's true.
Yada, yada. But it's like you have running backs out of the backfield. You have tight ends. You have receivers on the team.
Who's their tight end, though?
But 15 touchdowns, I mean, that's I'm just saying
those are Tyrod Taylor numbers.
Yeah. I mean, we're not talking 20, 25. We're talking like an 18 or 17 game season. You ended with less than a touchdown. So
he has a lot of rushing.
He's going to get a huge contract based on this. And I think that the big thing is, can Dable continue to, get him to progress and they get some more weapons around him, and does he get better? But we are so quick in football to just like anoint players as like the next coming of Patrick Mahomes right away. It's like, all right, it's still Daniel Jones. He's had a couple good games. They played the fraudulent Vikings in the first round. I think every team, like, when is the last time you've seen every team wanted to play the 13-win division winner?
Well, because, I mentioned that streak of the Ravens blowing leads. The Vikings had that streak of beating all the backup quarterbacks. Yeah. The Jets had their backup in, didn't they, when they played I think Tua was out.
Mike White.
Mike White. Tua was out for Miami. There was a whole bunch of backup quarterbacks they beat. Good for them. They beat the Bills, but that was trash. Yeah. A lucky win, but still a win. It's they won it. But yeah, I'm not anointing Daniel Jones the next, Mahomes or Josh Allen. Notice I said he's a poor man's Josh Allen. I think his skill set is much more limited, but I think that if you have a coach like Dable and they put some weapons around him, like how they developed Josh, he had no one to throw to his rookie year, much like Daniel Jones did. And then that's when they brought in John Brown and Cole Beasley. And then you saw Allen's career definitely go on that trajectory. And then all the Allen haters having to eat crow when he turned into a quarterback. You can't teach accuracy and blah, blah, blah. Okay. Yeah. How did that comment age, guys? And I wonder how much of those people now that doubt the Bills in the media are trying to cover up for the fact that they're wrong. They were wrong about Josh Allen and just don't want the Bills to win because they still got that rotten egg all over their face just about how wrong they were.
Well, that's the best thing on Twitter with all the cold takes exposed. And I will preface all that Daniel Jones talk was saying I bet on the Giants, so I was happy. He played very well yesterday. But I mean, honestly, it's like if you were a Giants fan, would you rather play the Vikings or the Buccaneers? Like I would rather have played the Vikings than the Bucs that are going to play tonight against the Cowboys. I just think it was just a matchup of every single team was in a game against the Vikings. I think they gave up more points, or they were close to giving up more points than they actually scored this year, which is insane how you could win 13 games with that.
I know.
So it's like you can't, you're not taking a playoff win away from people. Like, congratulations, but like, let's see what happens next week against the Eagles that have already beaten the Giants twice this year, and see if they can put up a game against them, and if Daniel Jones can play the same type of game against a team that's not playing, 10 yards off every receiver and guys are just running wild. I mean, that game should have ended earlier if Slayton could have caught the ball that was literally right in his chest, and the game was over. So they really almost had a chance to go down and really tie the game up, the Vikings, if for some reason Kirk primetime Cousins didn't decide to throw a 3-yard pass on 4th and 8 with a receiver right on him.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a fan of the Vikings and you're watching that and the season's on the line, it's 4th and 8, you got Justin Jefferson on your team, and he literally throws a 3-yard out with a guy right on him, like
short of the sticks.
Like, what are you thinking?
Yeah. I don't know, and just didn't throw to Jefferson at all, which we talked about his. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I'm sure Jefferson's stats and contested throws have got to be top 5 in the NFL, if not the best.
Yeah, just what are you thinking as a quarterback? It's like you see it actually happen a lot, but with the season on the line, a little bit different of a situation. It's like, dude, I'm forcing a ball. I don't care where it is, to who it is. And it's going to be past the first down marker on 4th and 8 with the season on the line. Like, I'm not being the guy that's having to answer the questions of like why I threw a 3-yard pass when we needed 8 with the season on the line. That was just crazy.
Yeah. It's just a brutal way to end your season if you're 13-3.
That's Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, that is Kirk Cousins, made big money. But again, goes back to your point about the dirge of quarterbacks, that Kirk Cousins, gets this big contract, and now you're kind of stuck with him in Minnesota for a certain amount of time. That contract's got to be getting old at this point.
Yeah, I think it's got to be. It might be time to draft the next quarterback coming in on that team as well. Yeah.
But again, look where you're going to be drafting because you won 13 games.
Right. Yeah. You're certainly not going to have an early pick, but you could develop someone. That's a good time to draft. Someone to develop them behind like a Kirk Cousins, because I could see him being a good mentor and a good teammate and trying to help bring somebody up. But he's got a lot of time to work on it now because he just got bounced by the Giants.
The other thing I saw a lot about with the Vikings was a lot of Vikings fans online were talking about how their defensive coordinator, I can't think of his name right now, just struggles to make in-game adjustments to things players are doing.
So he certainly struggles to call defenses that know how to guard receivers.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Yeah, and so again, a lot of it is coaching. Because all these guys are professionals. Miami Dolphins or Ravens or whatnot. I mean, look what they did. They're all professionals. A big part of it is the coaching. And again, you mentioned that pass that Slayton dropped, and you looked what Dable did. He's on the sidelines talking to him, personally offering him the encouragement because he's probably their best receiver. It sure ain't Joey Galladay, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, Kenny Galladay.
Galladay, sorry.
Yeah. I know. I saw a meme that says Kenny just earned his $75 million because of the one block he had in that game. It's like, that guy wasted so much money, but that was the prior regime.
Correct.
But we were talking about that, and Dave Gettleman got a lot of flack for some of the all the problems that the Giants have had in the last few years. But if you kind of look, some of the guys that he brought in were Barkley and Daniel Jones and Andrew Thomas. Like, his drafting's turning out to be pretty good. I think it was some of these terrible signings that he brought in with Kenny Galladay and some of the other free agents that he gets the flack. And obviously the biggest one was the hiring of Joe Judge, who just turned out to be, a crazy hire, and wanted to treat it like a high school football team and make his NFL players run laps all day long for dropping balls. Well, that doesn't work out when those guys make $40 million a year.
No, it does not.
So Dable, obviously huge culture change. I saw a video of him doing his dancing after the playoff game. You're happy for a guy like that. Certainly a good guy, certainly obviously someone that they obviously all want to play for. And it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I certainly think the Eagles are going to beat the Giants coming up this week. But we'll see what happens. We'll see if Daniel Jones can take that next step, and in my mind, he wins that game, he'll certainly take another step. I don't really take as much from the Vikings as other people do, because their defense was one of the worst in the league.
Mm-hmm.
On to Saturday night. Pretty crazy game with the Jaguars and Chargers.
Yeah, and I think this game speaks a lot to like what my feelings are about complaining about officiating and using officiating as an excuse for the outcome of the game. Because the way that game started, the Jaguars got screwed on calls. There was the Asante Samuel illegal contact on Zay Jones first couple drives. They did not call it. Asante Samuel intercepted the ball, and then the Chargers go on a run, whereas the announcer called it "quote unquote" playoff football, which he had him in a bear hug.
Let him play mentality.
Yeah, I broke up a fight this week, and I had someone in a bear hug like that to prevent that from escalating, any further. Definitely can't do that on a football field and call that playoff football. This isn't a little back and forth hand fighting or something like that. And then there was a no call pass interference on Ingram in the end zone. So things were not going well in terms of the calls, and it seemed like there was no chance, right? A lot of people turned the game off.
Well, it was certainly having an effect on Lawrence as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he basically, looked like Zach Wilson 2.0 in the first half with 4 interceptions, and I think he had 47 yards passing. But, some of those calls have a huge impact on the drives and, where you wind up in field position and things like that. So, obviously, not a great start. Yeah, the momentum of the game
was all Chargers. That's the game where it's, you're watching it and you're like, there's no way they lose, but they're the Chargers. Yep. This is also the team that played their starters the last week of the season. Mike Williams was out of the game as a result of that. Bosa was in the game, maybe they would have been better off without him because they lost the game because Bosa could not control himself. And that kind of goes back to the officiating. So there was a no-call false start on the right tackle that resulted in the Jaguars touchdown. Bosa threw a tantrum like a child, threw his helmet, got the unsportsmanlike call. As a result, now we're going to go for 2, and a field goal is going to put us up by 1 versus the field goal tying the game. And again, that's officiating. The calls are going to go back and forth. They're going to make calls for one team, make call for another team. I don't want to say it's a loser mentality to blame officiating, because maybe sometimes, thinking back to that Saints game years ago where they temporarily allowed you to challenge pass interference as a result. But the point is I think, and especially for kids, I hate when I hear young people, kids blaming officials, because when you do so, that you're blaming something that you can't control. If you want to be a high caliber athlete and things don't go well and you lose, and even when you win, you got to look into yourself. You got to look at what could I have done to influence that outcome of the game. Versus I'm just going to blame the officials and not worry about making myself a better player, not worrying about making my team better. So I really dislike this whole, trend that just seems even more popular with, just blaming the officials for everything, which I do recognize they have a result in the game, but they're human as well.
Yeah, and I think, players, coaches can all be a lot better if they realize that it's not just that one play in the game that determines the outcome ever. Most of these games are, 60 minutes long, 48 minutes, whether you're talking basketball, 9 innings. There's a lot of other things that can be done throughout a game for your team to be more successful. And, it's just a terrible mindset for an athlete to leave a game or a coach to leave a game feeling that one call was the determining factor. I mean, it very rarely can you point to that one thing happening that has the overall outcome of the game. Yeah, you got to be mentally tough. You got to be, more well prepared to be able to overcome things like that.
And then even they still had a chance at the end. So there was that sick call on 4th down where you thought they were going to QB sneak it, and just ETN, took off. That's where I think you go Bill Belichick at that point. You can't make it obvious if you're the Chargers, but I think at that point you just let them score on purpose so that you have a chance to maybe throw a bomb to the 50 and then throw a Hail Mary. But by not letting them score, and who knows, they maybe would have went down on purpose anyway once they figured out what was happening. But it's almost like if you're a coach, you want to teach your team, okay, in that situation, if they try to run the ball again to maybe get their field goal in better position, let them go by you, but don't make it obvious. Maybe pretend to tackle them. And I don't know, maybe that works.
Yeah, it's hard to do. Most guys are, coached up a little better these days to know the situations. I mean, some obviously don't because it has burnt some teams in the past, but I think they probably would have figured it out in that situation. It's kind of a perfect, scenario of what we're talking about. Like Lawrence and the Jaguars could have let everything that happened in the first half affect them mentally, and that goes to a huge credit of Doug Peterson.
Yes.
Getting his team, getting the touchdown right before half was obviously huge for them to go in 27-7 instead of 27-0, and then just being completely prepared for the second half, going down scoring right away in the second half, and then just continuing to fight all the way through. I think, the Chargers wound up with just a field goal in the second half just because of horrendous coaching. The fact that guy still has a job today is mind-boggling of just how they can continue to have him be the play caller, decision maker for that team is crazy. I mean, they better be making 4,000 phone calls to Sean Payton today. Otherwise, Justin Herbert's career is going to wind up being wasted.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's again, how many of these games have we looked at today where coaching, having the better coach was a huge factor?
Yeah. You can't have that happen. You can't lose that game. You can't, when you're up 27-0, You cannot lose that game. So huge. So now the Jaguars will move on to play the Chiefs this week, which I think will be a better game than people expect as well. This team just won't go away. Obviously, they have the fight in them, and they got some electric talent on that team with Lawrence and even all the receivers they brought in with Kirk and ETN stepping up. So, Chiefs better be ready for that game.
Yeah, and I mean, everyone wants to talk about how good the Chiefs are, which they are, but if you don't include that Raider game, those last games going into the end of the season, they really struggled. They had to go to overtime to beat the Texans. You almost lost to Denver twice. I don't remember who else played them tough. Maybe the Chargers, but yeah, that's the thing is every team looks very beatable. It was kind of going into it. It's like, well, the Bills, Bengals, and Chiefs look like the best, but who really looks like a juggernaut now is the San Francisco 49ers.
I know.
We haven't talked about that game yet, but that was the one team I think that clearly was dominating. I know Seattle was in the game a little bit at the beginning. Geno Smith threw some nice passes to
Metcalf.
Yes, thanks. But they just couldn't hang with them. They could run the ball, they could pass the ball. They have McCaffrey, Kittle, Deebo Samuel. And
their defense is obviously something everyone talks about as well. I mean, it didn't start out hot. First half. What was it? I think the Seahawks were up by a point or something like that going into the second half, but they didn't give up basically anything in the second half. And it's, kind of the theme of what we talked about is, the coaching and the halftime adjustments and coming out ready to play. But this team has not been all defense. I mean, they've been fantastic on defense, but it's crazy to see what Brock Purdy and some of these guys are doing on offense with Samuel and Ayuk and all of them.
Yeah, and Christian McCaffrey.
It's
because he's the question on him is not can he play anymore. The question on him is can he stay healthy, and he has. He's a different level type of player. So I think the 49ers look like the scariest team right now. It's because of how, and I hate to use words like this, how balanced they are. But it doesn't seem like it matters who the quarterback is. Anyone could play. Their even third string quarterback, Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant himself. So, and it seemed like also a big turning point in that game to a certain extent was that, I don't know if I'd call it a cheap shot. It was cheap when they twisted Samuel's leg after the tackle, it's just like why?
Yep. Yeah. They're going to have an interesting decision in San Francisco with Trey Lance and Brock Purdy. Now, obviously Jimmy G will be gone, but that's probably for another day. This guy has certainly put himself in the discussion. So that'll be interesting. So San Francisco is going to play the winner of tonight's game, Dallas and Tampa Bay. So we'll see what goes there. But I think they're favored against either one of those teams.
No doubt. No, it wouldn't surprise me whoever wins today. I could see the Dallas winning, but they're so inconsistent. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Tampa won.
Right. Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. I don't disagree with that at all. And then the Giants will play the Eagles. So the NFC just, to me, I mean, definitely just seems much weaker than the AFC. I mean, I know we've been talking about that, but you just look at the level of the way the games have been played.
Correct.
And, just the all around teams. I mean, I think the Bills, Chiefs, Cincinnati are tough.
Yeah.
And even the Jags as a fourth team.
The 49ers against either the Bills, Bengals, or Chiefs in the Super Bowl will be interesting because, there's that old adage, defense wins championships. Let's find out.
Yeah, I wonder what a line would be on that game, against any of those three top teams. Probably be a pretty close spread.
Yeah, maybe 3-ish.
Yeah.
And 3 just gets the whole DeMar Hamlin thing going on. Bill's also winning by 3.
Yeah, of course, the 3. We got the 3 in there somewhere.
Yeah, and do you know who won all their playoff games and the Super Bowl by 3 points was the Rams last year. So
they did?
Keep the 3 going. That's what I heard.
Yeah, well, hopefully you don't have a year like they had next year.
No.
but yeah, so yeah, pretty great weekend of football. You guys survived, so we'll see what happens next week.
Yeah, and we got one game left. That should be a good game. So
yeah, we got a nice game tonight. But yeah, the game that they didn't want to replay is getting replayed next week. So I think we'll get a true winner. So we'll see. We'll see who's going to the game. Are you going up to the game this weekend?
I will not be attending the game.
Oh yeah,
I'll be watching it from the comfort and of my own home.
Yeah.
I kind of turned to the crotchety old man. I do like to go to a game or two a year, but I kind of turn into the crotchety old man where I definitely enjoy the comfort of my house, not having the traffic and, being able to watch the other games while I'm at home. And, I do like going to the games though, but I won't be at this one.
Yeah. Maybe we can get together and watch the game and have a little banter throughout the game. Cause I'll certainly be wearing, my Bengals colors for the game,
because that's just what I need is more things to fire up my heart rate.
Yeah, I know. It makes it a little more interesting.
Yeah,
it's good to get fired up once in a while.
Sure.
Well, good luck. We'll see what happens, and we'll catch up next week after the games.
All right, man.
All right, buddy.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to Rivals Sports Pod. Please make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. You can also email us at rivalsportspod@gmail.com with any topics, ideas, or questions.